Good morning and welcome to Playing with Perspective. My name is Ollie and I work here at the Wallace Collection as a part of the Learning Department. And today I'm also lucky enough to be joined by artist Miranda Lopatkin.
Hi, hello. I'm Miranda, and I'm going to be running the creative element. We're going to be doing some lovely drawings. Going to have some trees and some rivers, and we're going to explore perspective.
Fantastic. I can't wait to do a bit of drawing a little later on. But before we get started, I just need to cover, of course, a few bits of housekeeping as always. So firstly, just to say, if you are watching along at home, make sure you have a responsible adult with you at all times. And it's the job of that responsible adult to ask any questions or put any comments in the chat function. Now, if you do put any comments in the chat function, please bear in mind that it's, of course, it's a public chat. So make sure that all of your comments are appropriate for a family audience and that you don't include any identifying information in there. Of course, we will be monitoring the public chat function, but we're not responsible for any comments made. So with all of that business out of the way, let's take a walk around the galleries and look for a little bit of perspective. Today, we're going to be taking a closer look at perspective. Or in other words, the tricks and techniques used by painters to give flat paintings depth. With a little bit of know-how, perspective can make a small amount of paint look like miles and miles of picture. Just take a look at this painting by old master and all-round famous Flemish painter Peter Paul Rubens. It's really only a few centimetres thick, but the landscape appears to go on and on and on and on, disappearing off into the distance, and it's all because of perspective. The painting is called A View of Het Steen in the Early Morning, and it's the second half of a pair, or pendant, to another painting by Rubens called The Rainbow Landscape. If you've been to the Wallace Collection, you've probably seen the rainbow landscape in our great gallery. But while Rubens' rainbows have been brightening up Hertford House for over 150 years now, Het Steen is usually displayed just down the road from us at the National Gallery, so we're really lucky to have it with us this summer for our new exhibition. Both landscapes were painted around 1636, just after Rubens retired, and show his fancy new house and all the things that he could see from his fancy new house. But most importantly for us, both pictures show some fantastic use of perspective. So how did he do it? There are two main ways to create depth in a painting. We call these aerial perspective and linear perspective. But before we get started on that, let's look at the layers that make up a landscape painting. The foreground, that's the part of the scene closest to the artist. The background, which you've probably guessed is the part of the scene furthest away. And the middle ground, which is, well, in the middle. These are usually arranged with the foreground at the bottom of the painting and the background at the top, like in Rubens' landscapes. Here's the foreground at the bottom and the background at the top. And last, but certainly not least, the middle ground, in the middle. These different parts of a picture are really important when creating linear or aerial perspective. For example, the golden rule with linear perspective is that objects in the foreground, the things that are closest to the artist, appear larger than objects in the background. This is just how we see things in real life and makes a painting look way more realistic, as well as giving it depth. Just look at this line of trees in the rainbow landscape. This bushy fella, right at the front, is huge in comparison to this little guy in the back. And it's the same throughout the painting. Just look at these cows in the foreground compared to these little heifers, who are still catching up in the middle ground. The difference in size makes them seem further away. But there's a lot more to it than just big trees and little cows. To make sure that every farmer, tree and cow is in the right place in the painting and is about the right size, Rubens has used special lines called orthogonals to help him get the correct perspective. Let's go back to those trees. If we draw a straight line from the top of our front runner here, all the way back to the smallest trees at the back of this little forest, and another line along the base of the trees, and we keep both these lines going, you'll see that they come together at a point. This is called the vanishing point, and it sits on a horizontal line called the horizon. It's an imaginary spot in the landscape, where if Rubens had continued to paint trees, they would have gotten so small they would have vanished. And if you look closely, they almost do. In fact, take another look at this painting and you might just see a few more of these orthogonal lines hiding in plain sight. If you have a ruler and a pencil, you can place it flat on your screen with one end at the vanishing point to see what lines line up. How many lines did you find? This is called single point perspective because the orthogonal lines come together at a single vanishing point. Now that you know what to look for, you'll be finding orthogonal lines all over the shop or museum. Just take a look at this painting. It was made in Italy about 300 years ago. If the vanishing point is about here, can you work out where the orthogonal lines would go? That's spot on! All of the lines in this painting come together to help create the effect that the buildings are disappearing off into the distance. But being such a clever painter, single point perspective just wasn't enough for Rubens. He also used 2-point perspective to make this field of wheat look a lot less flat. To create this effect, Rubens has used 2 vanishing points to show either side of the field disappearing to the left and right. Can you see any other orthogonal lines that come together at this vanishing point? This kind of linear perspective with different horizon lines and vanishing points can be quite difficult to create. But if you're as good as Rubens, it can make a picture look much more realistic. Just like an actual landscape with fields and trees and even a whole herd of cows spreading out in front of you in all different directions. Another technique that Rubens has used is called aerial perspective. Now, aerial perspective doesn't rely as much on lines and vanishing points, but instead uses colour and size to make objects or parts of landscapes, or even cows, look further away. If we split one of the paintings up again to show the foreground, background, and middle ground, you might notice that each section uses slightly different colours. Here in the foreground, Rubens has used warm, dark colours like reds and browns to make these people on the cart look like they're about to ride right out of the painting. But take a look at the middle ground and the colours are less intense. There are lots of greens and soft blues and yellows. Even the cows are starting to look a bit pale. And the further you go into the landscape, the paler and softer the colours get. In the background, Rubens has used cold blues and greys to suggest that these fields and buildings are miles away in the distance. Just look at those little blue towers. So how does it work? It's not as if objects change their colour the further away they get. Or do they? No. The answer is that the further away an object is, the more air gets between you and the object, making its colours appear paler and less intense. This is really handy when painting landscapes, because if you only used intense warm colours, or pale colours, or even middle-ish middle ground colours, nothing would really stand out and everything would look a bit flat. Even the cows. And who wants a flat cow? The cheese would be awful. The difference between colours is what creates what's called contrast, which is a fancy way of saying that strong warm colours stand out next to pale cold colours. This technique is perfect to use alongside linear perspective, just like Rubens has in his landscapes. We hope our video has helped explain how Rubens managed to squeeze so many miles of Flemish countryside into each of these amazing paintings. If you want to have a go at making your own masterpiece of perspective, stick around for our workshop with artist Miranda Lopatkin. Well, good morning and welcome back, everybody, to Playing with Perspective. We hope you enjoyed our little trip around the galleries. And this is just a reminder before we get into our creative element with Miranda in a second, that if you do have any questions about either our trip in the galleries or what Miranda will be drawing a little later, make sure to get those in at the comments section, and we'll be keeping an eye on those throughout the session today. But Miranda, what did you think? Did you enjoy our little trip in the galleries there?
Yeah, I thought it was fantastic. I felt like I was almost there. And it was fantastic seeing the two paintings together because you've got sort of a morning and a sundown effect as well, because it's taken from two different times in the day. And it was just wonderful to see them. And I loved how you drew the lines to show everyone.
Oh yeah, those lines are pretty tricky. There's lots of them on there. I think Rubens was quite ambitious with what he was looking to do, but you're so right. Great to have the paintings together again as well. But it's not just those two landscapes that show linear perspective as well. Do you have any favorites from the collection that really show how to do it?
There's a really wonderful painting from around sort of 1650, and it's of an avenue, which is a road, sort of a road with a tree-lined road, and it's actually got some cows and things on as well. I don't know if you've got a picture of it.
I think I've got it here. There we go. I think that's the one. Yeah, I love it. Of course, got to have a good cow in a landscape. It's hardly a landscape without one. So how does it work in this picture? Whereabouts would you say the vanishing point is?
So I would say you have to imagine almost a triangle going down towards the between yes, so going down towards where the sort of almost the top of the hedges are.
Right, I see. So that those trees, they get smaller and smaller the further they go back towards those hedges in the background.
That's right. So the trees towards the front of us are much bigger, and then they're almost vanishing off as they get further away. And you can see the sort of city behind as well, again in those sort of pale colours that you were talking about.
Oh yeah,
the impression of being further back.
That's a really good point. I'd not even thought about that. There's all those little boats in the background there on the lake, and I think it's probably a big church. Yeah, and a few windmills, of course, because it's a Dutch landscape. Yeah, looking all a bit pale. Fantastic. So I'll stop sharing that because I think you're going to be doing a little drawing with us to show us how to create our own landscapes. Is that right?
And that's right. Absolutely. I think everyone just needs really a pencil and a piece of paper to start off with. I'm going to show you mine.
Fantastic. I'll pop my camera off.
There we go. So a pencil is really helpful, but you could use a pen if you had one. If you are using a pencil, then a rubber is an excellent idea. Mine is just on the end of my pencil. And a ruler. So the first thing we're going to do is draw our vanishing point. So we need to draw a circle on our piece of paper around the center, maybe a little bit more towards the top. And then we need a horizon line. Now the horizon line, there we go, separates the sky from the land. And in real life, they're normally quite wavy, not a real straight line. So I don't know if you can see more there. So next we need to draw our lines for our perspective. This is called single point perspective. So from the point, we need to draw a diagonal. From the vanishing point, we need to draw a diagonal line down to the corner of the page. And we need to do that on all corners. This will be rubbed out eventually. So if you have a pencil, this would be ideal to do in a pencil. Otherwise, we can think of creative ways to draw over it. Right. Okay.
So those are those triangles you were talking about earlier that sort of come together at the central point. And those are going to help us make sure we get things the right size?
That's right. We're going to make sure that we're going to start with things larger at the sides. So large trees coming down into small, tiny trees. Okay. Now trees, some people are very confident drawing trees. And you can draw any kind of tree you like. But some people aren't so sure. So I'm going to give you some ideas for a couple of different trees. One is the Y tree. Okay, the Y tree is simply a Y. Can you see I've drawn a Y shape? Can you see that?
Yeah, it's a little bit pale. I know we're going to have to rub a few out later, but you might need to give us some nice thick lines there.
in a pen. So
Perfect.
over my Y. So here's my Y tree. And then you just keep on adding Ys. So the technique is we get all the branches on, and you keep adding Ys, and then you can start making some bits a bit thicker, like the trunk, and maybe add some sort of knobbly bits to your branches. And you can keep going like that. And then once you've got all the Ys in that you want, you can start adding some leaves. So this will be one with just a few leaves on, or you could have a winter. You could think about what season you want, and you could make it a winter tree with just the branches, or you could fill it with a lot of different leaves. You could do an autumn tree with, when you come to color it, do oranges and browns. Now I'm going to do my next tree a bit further back, another Y tree.
I think that's a really good point about the different seasons as well, because of course Rubens' two landscapes, one, the rainbow landscape is very much spring, and it looks, there are lots and lots of leaves on the tree. Everything is looking pretty fresh. Whereas the Het Steen, I'm not too sure. What do you reckon?
Yes, it seems a bit like a sort of wintry morning or something, I think. Yeah, it does look different. So there you go. Now I'm just bringing my tree up to my diagonal lines. I'm just going to bring this up a bit closer so you can see. So I've started them at the bottom diagonal line, and I'm going up to the top. And naturally, my tree is smaller because it fits between the two diagonal lines within the triangle. Now I'm going to do a different kind of tree. I think what I might do actually is, with my pencil, I'm just going to draw a sun. So I had thought about doing a sort of setting of the sun, which is actually another amazing painting at the Wallace collection called The Setting of the Sun. But that's another workshop. So I've got a sort of a sun at the background, and then I'm going to start drawing my other trees. And if you want to draw sort of fuller trees, you can start getting a nice thick base and maybe a few branches up, a few Ys. And then, I don't know if you know the technique, where it's almost like a cloud shape, and we can get those going. And then it can look quite effective to do a few all at once. And again, always making the trees behind smaller and smaller. Now, for now, I'm just getting the outlines in, and we can fill in details in a bit.
It's already starting to look a lot like that landscape we just had a little look at with the cows, where you've got the avenue of trees. It shows really clearly those trees getting smaller the further away they get.
Yeah. So and that was my inspiration for this as well as the rainbow landscape and Het Steen. So.
And they really are tiny in the background there, aren't they? They're all almost, tiny, tiny little trees by comparison.
So they're almost vanishing. So that's the whole point of this sort of little vanishing point dot. We can rub it out later, and it just looked like we managed to magically do this. So right, so we've got this, and we've got some trees in. There's another little trick that we can do to make things have a little bit of depth, and that's with our ruler. We have I'm going to actually keep this line down here to be the side of my avenue. But my avenue is actually not going to be a road. I'm going to make it water, because in the rainbow landscape there's some beautiful water and rivers, and it's actually a lovely illusion. So I'm going to do the sides of my riverbank.
Yeah, I love the river in the rainbow landscape, because you can see the rainbow in the river. It's it looks really special.
It reflects so much in that river. Yeah. So also you can see the reflection of the cows.
I was going to say, we can't forget the cows, of course, who are enjoying a bit of a splash in the river as well.
So if you see, I don't know if you can see, guys, but as soon as I add an extra line that's parallel, it gives it a little bit more depth and it makes it feel a little bit more 3D. And then I'm going to do my other trick, which is just one more line.
Oh yeah, it really makes the edge of the riverbank stand out there like a little ledge, doesn't it?
That's it, like a little ledge. So then when you come to color it or sketch it, you can then further make it look like there's more by doing lines that go horizontal, and it makes it look like it's a little wall or something like that. And I quite like a sketchy way, but if you want to be very precise, you could do it with a ruler. And then if you go down vertically, you really make it look like it's standing up.
Oh yeah.
So there's little tricks of the eye that we can do using perspective and also just the direction of our pens or pencils.
Definitely.
Okay.
And I suppose you could use that for anything. If you wanted to draw a road or maybe a building disappearing off, you could draw those bricks getting smaller, and it really gives that illusion of things disappearing off into the distance.
Absolutely, absolutely. So again, that whole idea that everything is smaller near the vanishing point and everything is bigger towards the front. Right, okay, the next thing I'm going to think about doing is starting to get some clouds in as well. So clouds that are further away will seem smaller, and clouds that are closer will feel bigger. So I'm just going to get a few sketchy. Oh, you can't. Can you see that? Let me try this.
It's a little faint.
Do you know what? Let's go with that with a pen. Like I say, it's okay to use a pen or a pencil. And I'm just going to do some more clouds. Now, Rubens clouds in the rainbow landscape actually have lovely colours through them. They reflect, again, the colours of the rainbow. So you could really use all different colours. There's pinks and yellows. It's really beautiful. So let's just...
Lots and lots of colours. And I was talking to our curator about this the other day, and they were saying that lots of the sky was painted on when it was still, the paint underneath was still wet, and it sort of smeared a little bit, although the curator probably didn't use the word smeared, but they kind of mixed some of the colours with the trees, and it makes it look kind of hazy, like it's just been raining. Which I don't know if I could do that myself, but maybe something we could aspire to do. Maybe that's one for next time.
Yeah, that'd be amazing. Now, one of the things I'm going to do is start to make this look like water, is to do some shapes of water flowing. So I'm going to start off with quite big waves, and then as you get towards the vanishing point, they're going to get smaller. And then when we colour this in, this will really come to life. And you could add all different kinds of textures if you want. Again, I'm sort of roughly going towards the vanishing point.
And I suppose you don't just have to use linear perspective for trees and that sort of thing as well. You could also add, all sorts of details, couldn't you? You could have, well, Rubens famously, obviously, it's got cows, but there's ducks in there. There's lots of people sort of wandering around. And I suppose they get smaller as well the closer they get to the vanishing point. Is that right?
Absolutely. I mean, you could really add anything you like. This is sort of, I suppose, a baseline, and as long as everything gets smaller as you get closer, then it will work really well. The next thing I would suggest is, we've got sort of a basic landscape here. I would suggest now rubbing out the lines at the top. So it looks as if we've magically known how to draw our perspective.
So no one will ever know that we used our orthogonal lines.
Yeah. That's our artist trick that no one needs to know. They'll just say, wow, look how you managed that. Now, the other thing is, I don't know if you can see, but I can see can you see my line of
your horizon
through my trees? I'm going to rub that out through my tree so that doesn't interfere.
It's a good idea.
If you've used pen for that, we can just use colouring. You could use coloured pens over the top of it. So there we go. That's our basic landscape. And what you could do then is start adding more details And we could also start colouring it in. Now, when we colour, Ollie, you said that earlier, that we have sort of darker colours at the front will make things stand out more. Browns and purples. Do you know what? I'm going to go purple for the side of this.
Well, I like a nice purple brick. Looks really good.
Yeah.
And it's those warm colours up front, isn't it? Kind of reds and purples and browns and that sort of thing.
That's right. Reds, purples, browns. And if you press quite thickly on your pencil, you can get a nice thick colour. And if you are lighter on your pencil as you go towards the back, it will appear paler anyway.
Oh, yeah. Sort of does the job for you.
It does the job for you. So how you use just one pencil can do a lot. I'm going to add a bit of brown as well. So I've got like a bit of brown on there too. So remember, you can mix colours. And then on our trees, I would also do the same trick. So let's get a nice thick colour on at the front. And then we can get a nice light colour. So you might even want to, I'm going to change pencils to a lighter pencil, but also just to press more lightly on it. And I'll show you at the back of these trees. So
oh yes, it's that cooler, lighter colour, isn't it?
That's right.
Makes it look like there's a lot of air in between you and those trees at the back.
Then you get the same tone if you're using the same pencil, but you just press down much harder. You don't need any special pencils for this, and any colour pencils will do. And you might even want to, so I'm just going to do that really thick. There we go.
Oh yeah, that one at the front's really standing out there, isn't it?
Right. And you might even want to get some little details on there, get some extra textures with another brown, if you have another brown, or maybe even draw some sort of bark-like textures. And then I'll get back through all the trees, but only tiny dots.
Oh yeah, because even the details get smaller, I suppose.
Even the details will get smaller. I'm going to put some lovely orange leaves, I think, on mine. I'm feeling mine's quite, well,
nice and autumnal.
Mine will be autumnal, because I feel like some of the paintings we've been looking at have been, but you could actually do some lovely pink blossom if you wanted. Some of the trees are quite blossomy. Now, if I'm going to start with the background, we talked a bit about sort of pale colours towards the back. I'm going to go with a nice sort of pale green. And I'm going to make it stronger as we get towards the edge. Can you see the colours, guys?
Just about that. Pale green, I think, is really quite pale, so it's a bit faint. But I suppose the colours up front will be a bit clearer because they're a bit more, a bit stronger green.
Sometimes it helps to just go over your horizon line with a stronger colour, and then we'll just add. And
straight away, that makes that little bit of that grass near the front there looks much closer than the hill in the background and the paler green, sorry.
Yep. So we've got some lovely rolling hills.
Sure, Rubens would be proud.
Yes, I'm sure. He worked really hard, I think, to make those perspective, to really give that illusion.
Yep.
Okay. So then I'll go sort of much darker at the front.
Fantastic.
And there you go.
Looks great.
Once you've added some blue, again, stronger at the front, you can almost colour it in the shapes.
Brilliant. Fantastic. And there we have it, a little landscape all of our own.
And you can finish it, take your time and finish it at home with all the colours that you like.
Definitely. Well, we look forward to seeing a few of those. And of course, if you do need a bit of a hand or a bit of a reminder, there is a sheet from Miranda in the description below today's video. That's also available via our website. So if you do want to click on the link below, you can have a few instructions just in case you get lost in making your own landscape. as obviously there's so much to cover there to make it look really realistic. But I'm afraid that's about all we've got time for today. So I'll just pop my camera back on. There we go. And just to say, of course, thank you so much to Miranda for demonstrating how we can make our own landscapes. And thank you to all of you at home for joining us today for a bit of a creative morning here at the Wallace Collection. Of course, we will be opening up again soon. So next week, I believe, in fact, on the 3rd, we'll be opening up and our new exhibition is opening. So do come and take a look at Rubens's 2 great landscapes and well, see what you think. See if you really feel they disappear off into the distance, and see how he's gotten on with his perspective as well. So we hope you enjoyed today's session, and look forward to seeing you all hopefully at the Wallace very soon. Goodbye.